Boker Or Rabotai Rishut Ma'alat Arav. So we're studying the Taryag Mitzvot now. No disrespect, but we're up to the 210th Mitzvah. And Yom Mazal is that today's Mitzvah is Shelo Lishkav Ima Behemot. That's the one we're at. So we don't choose the Mitzvah, but we have to go in order. It's a negative commandment. And of course it's in Parashat Aharemot. The source pasuk reads as follows: Ubchol behema lo titen shechovtecha. It's in Perek Yudchet, pasuk Chav Gimel. In English, they call that Beastiality. Because the Torah predicted that humans will even entertain such abominable practices, and therefore the Torah has to go out of its way to say that it's forbidden. But I think it's quite fascinating the reason of the Sefer HaChinuch. You see, we would have said it's disgusting, it's reviling, it's to'evav, such. But the Chinuch gives a very rational reason. He says, "Shehakadosh Baruch Hu hafetz shehiyu kol haminin shebara be'olamo osim perot leminehem." And Hakadosh Baruch Hu created the world, and He wants the world to be inhabited. However, He wants it to be inhabited, min bimino, that each species will procreate in its species itself. V'lachen lo timsah beracha v'hagedula b'ma shehu behefech. Whenever you see crossbreeding, you'll never find beracha. For example, he brings the example of the pered. What's the pered? The pered is the mule, the female donkey. That it's a crossbreed between a horse and a donkey. But we know something about a pered. It cannot reproduce. So you see there's no beracha. Because it was a product of a hybrid, the beracha is not there. Ena beracha v'gedula nimset b'ma shehi or shehu behefech. And then he brings another example of grafted fruits. That we know it's possible to make fruits by grafting one fruit with another, but the fruits that's grafted cannot produce other fruits. It might be able to be produced, but it cannot produce other perot. And his language is v'chol ilan hamurkav mibet ilanot lo yitzlach la'asot peri kamohu. The grafted fruit will not be able to produce a fruit like it. That's God's way of saying that there's a curse over here, that there's no beracha, that there's no hasadim. V'kol sheken b'min ha'adam. Now let's forget about the mule and the kiwi. Now let's talk about human beings. So he says, v'kol sheken b'min ha'adam shehu muvhar kol haminim, where the top of the pole of the cycle of life. שאין ראוי שיתערב במין הבהמה הפחותה והגרועה. Although most of the humans that are the crown of the creation should not intermingle with the lowest of the creation, with the species of the animal. Now, some of the laws that apply to this mitzvah. The Chinuch writes there's no difference between a behema or a haya, even though the Torah writes behema. Furthermore, it doesn't matter the age of the animal. That means even if the animal is ben yomo, it just came out of the mother's womb, that animal is considered a behema, le'inyan, this isur. Now, it doesn't matter either, forgive me again, whether the avon was done kedarko, in the normal way, or shelo kedarko, or in the abnormal. When it comes to Bi'ah, the Torah does not make a difference between derech or shelo kederech v'amevin yavin. Now the law is, and this is exceptional, that not only does the perpetrator, the man that commits this sin, get punished by the most severe of the punishments, which is sikilah, but the Torah says, v'gam behema taharogu, that the animal is also put to death by the same punishment, sikilah. And the question is, what do you want from the animal? Well, the animal is hayav in Taryag mitzvot. Why would they put the animal to death? So the Gemara says 2 reasons. Number 1 reason is called takala. What does it mean, takala? Because this animal was a stumbling block to a human being, and therefore he deserves a punishment. Because this animal over here caused the human being to fall into sin. So for that animal that was the arbitrator of sin needs to be eradicated. The second reason the Gemara brings is because of kalon. What does kalon mean? Shame. Because, listen, it's one thing that they put the perpetrator to death, but as long as that animal is still alive, what are the people going to say? That's the animal. That's the animal that Ploni was with. And therefore, he gets now an additional punishment of busha, and the Torah says that much he doesn't deserve. So therefore, in order to protect, only the Torah has such sensitivity, to protect the dignity of the perpetrator. I would have said, this guy should be embarrassed. The guy's an animal himself, committing the sin over here. But the Torah is very, very measured in its punishments. He deserves sekilah, but he doesn't deserve now. And by the way, that if he has a family, that would cause bushat to his family as well. Every time that animal walks down the street, that's the animal that this guy's father was with. So therefore, you see that the animal is put to death as well. Now, a few more rules. The animal is only put to death only if the perpetrator is a gadol, meaning an adult, and he is mezid, and he does it on purpose. He doesn't actually have to be a gadol, the Chinuch writes. Even if the perpetrator was 9 years old and above, the animal is also put to death. However, we're not going to put a minor in sikilah. So what happens if a 9-year-old, let's say, commits ta'avon b'mezid? The animal is niskelet. Because again, the reasons still apply. You have takala and you have kalon, but you're not going to punish the minor with sikilah, because we never punish minors with capital punishment. But the Chinuch's language is v'ra'ui liyasero, that you should give him some spanking and some beating. Finally, the law is, if let's say the perpetrator is less than 9 years old, then already the Halakha says the animal is not put to death and the child is let go. This law applies b'chol zeman, b'chol makom. Again, if there's witnesses and he did it b'mezid, the punishment is sikilah, and the animal gets sikilah as well. If he did the avon b'mezid, but there's no witnesses, the punishment is karet. And if anybody did today's daf already, the Gemara tells us clearly exactly what the punishment of karet is. It's a premature death. According to today's Gemara, at least, is if somebody dies, God forbid, between the ages of 50 and 60, except for the age of 52, which is mitat shemon aramati, then that would be one form of karet. Of course, if he did this b'shogeg, could you imagine, how could a guy do this b'shogeg? But I guess he didn't know. And he was maybe raised in the African Congo where this was normal, and therefore he thought that this is, what's the difference? Ba'alei Hayim is Ba'alei Hayim. And, especially today when you look at society looks like animals anyway. So therefore, it's hard to tell the difference between the animal and the human today. So maybe he didn't realize the difference, and therefore if he did it b'shogeg, then he would have to go to the Beit HaMikdash and bring Korban Hatat.